Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I know that I'm excited to be here with you today. And I really am. I love doing this every day. It's so rewarding for me, and I hope it's rewarding for you as well, but it's so rewarding for me to kind of come here every day and share these thoughts and these feelings and these philosophies, and most of all, the practices, right? The practices that can help you to get not only just get a handle on your stress and reduce the reactivity and the emotional dysregulation that comes with high levels of stress and pressure in our lives, anxiety, all that. But also, it's about, as the title of the podcast says, it's about showing up to life, and what makes these practices a little bit, or maybe a lot bit different from other things that we might practice, right? Like when we try to learn to do something new, right? Like when we say, I'm going to learn how to clean my house every day differently, or I'm going to learn how to, learn to play a musical instrument. I'm going to learn how to budget my household in a different way. I'm going to learn this. I'm going to learn that, right? When we're learning things and kind of new methods to do things in our lives, right? A lot of times what that includes or really is all about is going outside and finding information and bringing that in and somehow changing the way that we are through an additive process, right? I hope that makes sense to you, because the thing that makes mindfulness practices different and heartfulness practices, the way we talk about here, the thing that makes them different from that kind of practice, learning something new, a new musical instrument, learning to do finances or what have you, the thing that makes mindfulness different is that, as the practices that I teach you here and the practices that I've shown you how to do and the practices that I work with my clients to help them to really, master, is that it's not what they're all trying to do is they're trying to get down and trying to help you to become you. Right. And that's the thing. Right. And that's really the important aspect, the really vital and amazing aspect of this work. Right. We all have roles that we play in our lives, right? So for me, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a homeowner, I'm a car owner, I'm a mindfulness teacher, so that's 5 things that I just was able to rattle off the top of my head. And as you know, I don't script these, so it's not like I spent a lot of time figuring. Those literally just came right off the top of my head. And I'm sure I could come up with more roles that I play, right? There's certain friends for whom I play a certain role, right? Like some of my friends think of me as the older married guy friend that I have, and other friends think of me as, the younger married guy friend. I don't have too many of those friends anymore. I'm getting to that end of the spectrum where everybody seems to be younger than me these days. But the point that I'm making is that we all have so many different roles that we play, so many different hats we wear, right? And of course, this, is also compounded when we get into the workplace, right? Because even within your workplace, there are several different roles that you're going to wind up playing. And so with all of these roles that we play in our lives, right, and all these different responsibilities that each of these roles requires of us, it's very easy to get lost in this kind of, haze or fog of all of these roles, right? Because each of your roles, right, signifies something that someone expects of you, right? That's really what a role is, right? If I consider my role as a father, right, my children are relying on me to care for them, right? Make sure they have enough food, make sure that their bed sheets are clean, make sure their laundry's clean, make sure they have, they brush their teeth and make sure that make sure that I'm teaching them, I'm guiding them through this life, right? That's what my role as a father is, right? My role as a husband is much different from that. My role as a mindfulness coach is much different from each of those, right? And so each one of these, or as I was saying, so my role as a mindfulness coach, right, is that I have, 17 different people out there who are all my clients, and they rely on me to show up every day, week by week, to show up and it's every day for me, but for each one of them, it's only once a week, right? But to show up every week, fully and confidently, and really, engaging in the conversations, right? That's my role. That's my responsibility, my expectation of that role. Right. And so each of the roles that we play in our lives, has this set of expectations, this set of duties, this set of responsibilities. And so when when we're kind of caught in all of these different responsibilities that we have, right, each one of these is going to have its own sort of set of, of challenges, its own sort of set of distractions and complications, right? And this is something that is it's very easy. Again, it's very easy to sort of lose our compass point when we dwell in all of these different roles, right? And so one of the things, what I'm getting at here is that the benefit of the work that we do in mindfulness, right? What mindfulness asks us to do or begs us to do is to really be us, right? And it's okay to still have all these different roles, right? But mindfulness, one of the great things that comes through this practice, one of the primary, at least in my opinion, one of the primary benefits of mindfulness practices is the emotional intelligence that arises through the work, right? As you develop the skill of being present, being accepting of what is in the present moment, being, having some kind intention for yourself and others, and being curious about what's all going on, right? What you're doing is you're cultivating emotional intelligence, right? And emotional intelligence starts with self-awareness, right? And from self-awareness, self-regulation arises, and from self-regulation, empathy arises, motivation arises, and then we go into empathy, and then we go into social skills, right? That's what emotional intelligence is all about, right? And so if we look at that, just the first step of that, right? Just the first self-awareness part of it, right? Is that it's very often, at least in my personal experience, right? I've had many times in my life where I have found myself, trying to not just play a role, but trying to, within that role, be someone that I thought other people wanted me to be. Right. And I'm sure I'm not alone here. I'm sure many people watching this and listening to this have resonate with that. I'm sure of it because I've heard it from a lot of different people. So I know I'm not the only one. Right. And it's OK to understand that. It's OK to it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It's actually quite normal to feel this way. Right. Because within all of these roles, there are also, there are benefits that we reap from these roles, right? So for instance, whatever you do for a living, right? You go there, you do that thing for a living, and you get the money that you use to then support your life. Right. So if you like, trading Pokemon cards, right, going to a job affords you the luxury of being able to buy Pokemon cards. Or if you're like me and you're a houseplant fanatic, then it gives you money to go buy more houseplants, right? Until you literally run out of room for them, which is kind of what's happening to me. I mean, my office here is in a sub level, so there's not great light. That's why you don't see a lot of plants here. If you go up into my house, they're everywhere, and I love it. But anyway, this is not a podcast about houseplants. The notion, though, the benefit that we're deriving from the roles that we play, right? Again, the role as the parent, I have obligations, but I also have a benefit, right? I also get to call myself a father. I get to watch my children grow. One day they're going to start doing chores and maybe that lightens my load. There's a lot of different things there. But once there's a benefit, which could also be called a profit, right? And especially with work, right? That definitely applies. It once there is some kind of personal profit involved, some kind of personal gain involved, right? It switches our perspective on things, right? And it puts us in a place where we feel like, well, I got to do what I got to do because I really need that reward. Right. And that's, I believe, where we set ourselves up to start, sacrificing, maybe a little bit. And it happens in very small ways, especially in the beginning, where we start to sacrifice our authentic self in the interest of what we believe someone else requires of us to be. Right. So in my life, for a long time, I worked in the advertising business in New York City. Now, I never felt like I belonged in the advertising business in New York City, right? And certainly not as a salesperson as I played that role for a long time. Now, why I ended up in that role and how and all that, that's a different story. Maybe I'll tell you that someday, but that's a long story, But the fact of the matter was that, because of that financial reward, right? Like I needed to, I had aspirations of a high lifestyle, right? So I wanted that financial reward. So I felt like, okay, I can do this thing that I don't necessarily love doing, right? But I can do this thing because it will afford me those things that I want, right? And that's all well and good, right? So far, no problems at all. But the problem arises when I was in that role and I realized that in order to be successful in that role, or at least I thought, let me be clear about that, because I look back on it and I say to myself, I could have been me back then, but I wasn't, because I thought that what was required of me in this particular role was for me to be someone who I was not. Right. So like you look at me now, like I remember actually physically, I remember trying to grow my hair out when I was in the advertising business. And I think I might have one or two people who I worked with back then who are watching this, and they'll probably laugh at this because I made an attempt and everybody's like, what's up with your hair? It's so messy. What are you doing? Come on, clean yourself up. And that's the thing, right? And I know that's a silly thing, right? And it is. It's a very silly thing, and it doesn't matter. And in the end, I could have pressed on, and I could have grown my hair out and overcome those sort of criticisms and stuff like that, right? But the point is, though, that encapsulates what I'm talking about here, right? That I always thought that I had to be this, I had to fulfill the image that this other person had of me, right? And so one of the things that, again, the benefit here of mindfulness practices, one of the most amazing benefits of mindfulness practices is as you develop the self-awareness, right? You come to realize, number one, how much of this you are actually doing, right? Because it's not obvious. It wasn't obvious to me then. It's only obvious now that I'm looking back on it with the level of self-awareness I have now, right? So for all you listening right now who are just kind of starting out on your mindfulness practices journey, maybe now is a good time to ask yourself some questions about that, right? Like, are you being you, right? Like is that, when you show up to work, right? Or when you show up to your spouse or your children or your friends, who is it that's showing up? Is it you? Or is it some version of you, some avatar that you believe is necessary in order for you to get what you need out of the various roles that you're playing? And it's a very interesting question to ask. And it's a very important question to ask, a very valuable question to ask. Now, again, like most of this, the question becomes a little bit more important than the answer, right? Because you can't necessarily, snap your fingers and say, okay, yeah, I'll just be me. Like, do we even know what that means? Right? Like what does that mean? And this is very similar to, to mindfulness practices in general, right? A lot of times I use the metaphor of learning to ride a bicycle, when we talk about mindfulness practices and in a very specific way, right? So if I were to, I could give you 1,000-page book on how to ride a bicycle, right? It could tell you everything that a bicycle is made of. It could tell you the physics involved. It could tell you the materials. All it could tell you everything that you could. In 1,000 pages, I could exhaustively explain every single aspect of riding a bike. right? I could make a 3-hour movie instead of writing a 1,000-page book, right? And I could explain literally every single facet, every detail to the most minute, granular level. I could tell you everything you need to know about riding a bike. Right. And it could be very understandable, right? It could be like, okay, now I get it. I need momentum. I need balance. I need, the whole, I could, you could conceptually understand it just fine. Right. But that doesn't mean the two things that happen, right? It doesn't mean that you can then get on the next bike that you see and just start riding it like an expert, right? Because you can't, right? Because there's only so much that the words are going to convey to you in terms of what it means to ride a bike, right? And it is through the experience of riding the bike, the experience of going through the training wheels and wobbly and falling a few times and going through the frustration and getting to the point where, okay, now I get it. But even goes past that, right? It's not just that first time that you're able to ride the bike that you're all of a sudden an expert, right? It's over time. Every time you ride the bike, you grow a little bit more with it. You understand a little bit more about it on a visceral, experiential level, right? And that is the thing that cannot be communicated with words, right? And the same thing happens with mindfulness practices, right? Every day I come here and I spend 20 to 30 minutes and I tell you all about how mindfulness works. I've given you practices. I've offered to review the practices with you. I've offered to coach you through doing the practices. And I do that for 17 different people. I coach them week in and week out on how to do their mindfulness practices. And I watch them grow, and it's quite beautiful, right? But there's a limit to how much I can do, right? Like even as I explain week in and week out, I mean, I have a handful of clients who I've been working. I got to find another word for that person. I don't like the word client because it sounds too businessy, but I have, a handful of the people that I work with every week, I've been doing for over a year, right? Actually coming up on like a year and a half now. Right. And so, still there is only so much that it can come from me. Right. And that's what I see happening, too, is that when people are, when they're doing their practices and I'm meeting with them week after week after week after week for months and months and years, even if it's somebody just for the regular 12 weeks, which some people do just come in for 12 weeks, even less, and then kind of graduate and do on their own. Right. Even for those people, right, there's only so much that I am actually doing, right? There's only so much I can describe. There's only so much I can illustrate. There's only so much I can explain. And so this is the journey, right? And that's what I mean by when you start to inquire and start to set the intention to align with your authentic self, right? Because the thing that's keeping you from your authentic self is the expectations. It is the clinging and the aversion. It is the constant overthinking, the monkey mind, the worrying about what people think about you, the worrying about are you fulfilling everybody's notion of who you're supposed to be and all that, right? All of that thought, right? We talk about how that keeps you from your happiness, right? Which is true, right? When you remove all of that and you remove the stress and you remove the anxiety, you remove the negative emotions, and the clinging and the aversion, right? What is left is your happiness, right? But what is also left when you remove all of that, and it takes time and it takes practice to get to the point where all of that is truly removed, but what is left is not only your happiness, but also your authentic self. And I want to tell you something, okay? Now, this is really important, okay? And I'm telling you something from my personal experience right now that I want you to know because it's really important, okay? 3-4 years ago, when I decided I was going to do this professionally, I had been practicing mindfulness for a few years already, and I decided this is what I want to do. I want to teach people to do this because I realized the benefit that I got from it, and I realized how valuable it was, and I wanted to bring this to others. I wanted to help people to do this, right? And it's been a great journey, right? But in the beginning, right, I was still in that mindset of, am I who I need to be in order to do this, right? And I was talking to like marketing people and marketing coaches and everybody's telling me, this is how you have to do it. This is how you have to do it. You can't, you can't, send an email like that. You got to send an email like this. You can't, don't say this, say that, that kind of stuff. You have to have your, you got to be an expert. You got to be buttoned up. You got to, have a standing desk, all this stuff. It was insane. Like, it just got so much, kind of input from so many different directions that it just became like, what is all this? And what I realized was that I was doing the same thing that I had done way back in the advertising world. And also when I owned my little restaurant, that was a role I was playing. And I was, I had to make sure, because, and again, it was the income level, right? Like I had to make sure that I was the kind of person that people wanted to come in and eat, I couldn't necessarily be myself because I was too afraid to. I was afraid that maybe somebody wouldn't like who I really was, and that would have, negatively impact my income level. And that, when you have a couple of kids, that's some scary stuff right there, right? And so the thing that I want to explain to you here, and the thing that I want to share with you here, is that, something really, really cool happened to me only a few months ago, actually, right? Where I stopped doing all that. Maybe 6-9, probably at the beginning of this whole COVID thing, so like maybe close to a year ago, 9 months, let's say. Around 9 months ago, I started just being art. And I started really just deliberately and intentionally being me. Right? And showing up to conversations as me, not as what my marketing coach told me I should do so that I sign more clients and get more money and all that. No. I show up as me. Right? And I show up with my own sensibility, and I show up with my own logic. I show up with my own tolerance and my own excitement and my own love and my own passion and my own compassion and my own essence. Right? It's not about like a strategy. My coach, and this happened after I had started this process, but my coach talks to me about, we can operate from our trauma and our strategy, right? Which is what we're talking about here, right? Like when we're operating from a place of trauma and strategy is when we're, worried about being a certain thing so that we can get a certain thing out of it, right? But my coach, who's an amazing person, she had me, she had me explore the idea of going from my trauma and my strategy into my essence. Right. And again, the process had already been started, which is just one of the other amazing things that's happened. But once I was able to intentionally do that and really be me, folks, I've never been more successful. Right? Like I have people contacting me who I'm not even like looking for, and they're asking, hey, how can I work with you? Some of you are doing it. Some people on Facebook are doing it. People are introducing me. The point is that as I become me, right, I'm working at a different vibration level, and I'm working at a different, just a different level of all kinds of things. And so I wanted to bring this up to you because I want you to give yourself permission to be exactly who you are. And I want you to try it. I'm inviting you to try it. I'm inviting you to keep doing the work, to develop the self-awareness so you can see ways in which you are not being you. And when you see those ways, I want you to give yourself permission to try and be yourself, because I'm telling you now that I think it's always going to be a beneficial thing to operate from your core essence, as opposed to the strategy that you've come up with of what you think the world needs to see from you. All right. Your relationships are going to be more pure. Your work is going to be more focused, because again, remember, when it goes both ways, right? When we become who we really are, well, then we automatically eliminate a lot of that interference that I talked about before. So I hope this makes sense to you, and I hope it helps you. I hope it inspires you. And if you have any questions, I invite you to get in touch with me. Okay, you can send me an email at art@artburnscoaching.com, or you can go to my website, artburnscoaching.com. The bottom of every page, there's a clock, a banner that has a clock in it. It says book a free call or something like that. Hit the button, go through the steps. You're going to pick out a day and a time on my calendar that works for you. Put in your name, your email address, stuff like that, and you're done. And then I will take it from there. And we will have a 45-minute to a 60-minute conversation that there's no cost to you. I cover the cost on this. And if you have any questions about this or anything else, this is a place where those questions can truly be answered. I mean, I can answer just about any question with an hour. Okay. I mean, you see what I can do in a half hour on these podcasts, right? So try me out. Let me know. Okay. Because I would love to talk to you. All right. And I would love to show up as me and get to know you. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I wish you well. I'll be back again Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.